Hi, I'm Adam Summer. You're listening to the Yerushalmi Talk podcast with the support of the Yeshivat Devar Yerushalayim in Har Nof, Jerusalem. This is Demai chapter 7, Halacha 7 in the Art Scroll 74A1. This is part 1 of the shiur. This is a two-part shiur. And this shiur is dedicated to my father-in-law's passing, just passed away. And it's to Pinchas Hai ben Malka. And Pinchas Hai ben Malka, he made sure that his 8 sons would be avrachim, and they all learned full-time, and a couple of them are even Rosh Kollels, and everything that he did was to make sure that his family would have a life of Torah. So this year is dedicated to the elevation of his soul. So when we get into Trumos, a lot of the sugyas that we're familiar with are going to be dealing with Dumuas. Dumuas are going to be mixtures that are going to be between Truma Gedola and a mixture with Hulin that's all mixed together. Chapter 7, Halacha 7 of Demai is unique and special because it really deals with when you have a mixture of different Maaser statuses. So let's say you don't have a Demua. Let's say you have something that has the Maaser Rishon taken out, and you have something where the Truma Maaser didn't get separated out from the Maaser Rishon, and now it gets mixed into a pile of Hulin. What do you do? So one of the sub-themes here in this Mishnah is that you always have the availability to go to the Tevel seller, if there is one in your town, and buy from the accredited Tevel seller, and then fix both piles or all 3 piles together. So you buy this new Tevel, and you fix this broken, messed up mixture that is very complicated to fix with this new tevel that you're allowed to purchase in this one context. And it's for fixing these piles. But what this is trying to teach you is what do you do if there's no tevel seller? What do you do to fix this if you can't get tevel, or you didn't grow tevel, or you're out of tevel, and you don't have another pile of tevel to fix it? How do you rectify it? And that's what this is teaching. Now, most of you are going to be confused by the math, and I want to give you some encouragement on this. There is a value to your development as a Jew and a human being to dig into some of the harder sugyas and some of the harder mishnahs and pay attention to it, because it refines you, and even if you don't get it today, you can get it later on, or a lot of the concepts that will be there, you will become aware of them, and they'll light up later when you start to see these concepts get applied elsewhere in the Shas. And it's worth trying to dig in and learn the technicalities on how to do it, just for the sake of learning. So I encourage you to not get discouraged by the mathematics and not get discouraged by the complexity, because it is complex. And sometimes, not everything can be, where like you feel good when you're learning. Sometimes it's going to be nitty, knotty, and rough and tough and, sweaty math sort of stuff. And that's what this really is. So I encourage you not to get discouraged, and I encourage you to go check in the Art Scroll in 74A1 and spend a little time looking at it, because these do sharpen your mind. These are there to sharpen your mind, and it will sharpen your mind. And you'll be better off for it. Anyway, we have this Mishnah breaking things down to 4 statuses. And again, we're dealing with 2 baskets of fruit that get intermixed together. And the Maaser status is going to be different. And the Mishnah is going to talk about how to deal with the 4 cases. And the first case goes like this. If 100 figs of tevel mixed with 100 figs of hulin, and he wishes to tithe the tevel and permit the mixture for consumption, he must remove from the mixture 101 figs. So in this way, he can be certain of having removed at least 1 fig of tevel. Then what he'll do, by the way, is he'll designate that fig as Trumas Maaser, and it means that he's already rectified all 100 tevel figs of their Truma Maaser obligation. Now, when this says the word tevel, I want to point out, this is not talking about tevel where the Truma Gedola has not been taken out. This is talking about a pile of figs, says the Rosh, that a pile of that the Truma Gedola has been taken out, but what has not been taken out is the Trumas Maaser. We remember that, yes, you take out, the second tithe after the Truma Gedola, which is going to be the Maaser Rishon, and within the Maaser Rishon, once you take out the Truma Gedola, the Trumas Maaser, which goes to the Kohen as well, then you have a rectified pile that's not tevel anymore. So there's two tithes that have to come out to make sure it's not tevel, and this is talking about a pile where the first one was taken out, but the second one was not taken out yet. And so what this is trying to explain is like this. This is trying to say that you have 100 figs of hulin in the mixture. Hulin, by the way, is going to be where something has already been fully rectified and it's free to use. Every one of the tithes have been taken out. But now you have another pile in this other fruit basket where the Truma Gedola has been removed, but not the Maaser. So what we're dealing with here is you have 100 figs of hulin in the mixture, and all the rest are tevel. And the idea is that you have a total of 200 figs. So removing 101 of these figs is going to make sure that at least one of the removed figs is tevel. Now, you don't know which of that one fig it is, right? And that's going to be a source of a maloket between Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish, but let's continue. So removing 100 of the figs, 101 figs, out of this 200 fig pile, it's going to make sure that at least one of the removed figs is tevel, and it's going to be fit to become Truma Maaser on behalf of all the tevel in the mixture. So what happens is we're trying to isolate the eventual Truma Maaser fig in this group of 101. And if we're only able to remove 100 figs or less, the problem is there might be hulin, and we can never be certain where the Truma Maaser is located. So the idea is that, says the Ravad, is that it should be noted that there's much doubt as to whether this is... the idea is that, says the Ravad, is that okay, forget what the Ravad said. So if the idea is that if you can't simply designate Trumas Maaser for the tevel, where you're going to first designate the Maaser Rishon, and you can't just do that because the Torah refers to Trumas Maaser as Maaser from Maaser. And therefore, you have to separate and designate at least one fig of tevel along with 9 other tevel figs, but you don't know where they are in this pile. And you have to designate that as Maaser Rishon, and then designate this one as the Trumas Maaser for the other 9 figs. Now, again, you have to do this all in order, and you can't keep the rest of the Maaser Rishon for himself, this fellow, and he has to give those figs to a Levi, or you have to give them their value. And you do this by either giving him 9 fruits from among the 99 that become permitted, because again, you're taking out 101, or you pay him the value of the money. And the Ravad is saying that his only alternative with this group of 101 is to try to sell it to a Kohen for the price of Truma. By the way, the price of Truma always sells for less than the price of hulin, because the tithes have not been taken out, and only because the Kohen can use it. So it's not available to everybody. So he can charge the Kohen for 100 figs, since the fig that is Trumas Maaser must be given to a Kohen. So basically what this is trying to say is that the Mishnah is teaching that if you want to permit at least part of this mixture to a non-Kohen, he has to take out 101 figs from the mixture, designate the Truma Maaser in that group, and although he'll not be able to use 101 himself, you at least salvage 99 of the figs. And you also have to designate the Maaser Sheni for the tevel, but he does not ever remove this Maaser, and he can redeem it for money. And one of the ideas is that, again, you're trying to come up with how do you clean this pile so you can use it if you're a non-Kohen. And again, it's very easy to just go buy a third pile of hulin and fix it that way. But again, a pile of tevel and fix it and turn it into hulin. But if you can't get access to it, then this is how you do it. This is the math of how you do it. You take your 200 figs that are all mixed together. You take out 101, and from there you separate out the ties, and you're going to take out 2 of them. The Mishnah is teaching that if he wants to have at least part of the mixture as a non-Kohen, you're taking out 101 figs from this mixture of 200. You're going to designate out the Truma Maaser in that group of 101 figs. And you can't use the 101 for yourself. And this 101, by the way, has to end up going and being sold to a Kohen at a loss. But you still get to keep the 99 that you separated out. So it's going to be less than half. So the second case is going to go like this. And that's the best case you can do, by the way. That's literally the best case you can do, is you're basically, without having to buy another pile of tevel to go fix it, you're basically getting use of 99 of the fruits, and then you have to sell to the Kohen at a loss the 101. So that's the best you can do. The second case goes like this. If 100 figs of tevel mixed with 100 figs of Maaser Rishon, whose Trumas Maaser has not yet been removed. So this is Maaser Rishon where the third tithe has not been taken out yet. So it's still going to be tevel, right? There's 2 tithes that can make something tevel. This is talking about where the second tithe has not been taken out. The first one has. It's still tevel. And this 100 figs of tevel is mixed with 100 figs of Maaser Rishon. And the idea is that he must then, says the Mishnah, remove 101 figs from the mixture in order to permit the rest of the 99 as consumption for hulin. So in the last case, you are dealing with a mixture of tevel mixed with 100 figs of hulin. Now you're dealing with 100 figs of tevel that perhaps did not have the Truma Gedola taken out at all, along with the 100 figs of Maaser Rishon that also did not have the Trumas Maaser taken out. So both piles are tevel. One had all of the tithes, or the first tithe taken out, one did not, and they did not have the second set of the Trumas Maaser tithes taken out, so that this is definite tevel. And the Mishnah basically says he must remove 101 figs from the mixture in order to permit 99 for consumption as chulin. So by removing this amount, he may be certain that at least one Maaser Rishon fig is there out of this 101. And then he's going to designate this fig along with 10 more of the 101 figs as Trumas Maaser, and he thereby rectifies the remaining group of 99, and he's allowed to be a non-Kohen and eat from this 99. And since the Ravad is pointing out, since the 101 figs from this mixture ensures that there's at least one Maaser Rishon fig from the group of 101, and even if all the other figs in the group are tevel, he'll have at least 11 figs to use as Trumas Maaser, which can be done by designating 10 of the tevel figs as Maaser Rishon, and then designating those 10 along with one original Maaser Rishon fig from this group as Trumas Maaser for the entire mixture. And then we're going to fix the entire mixture as the Truma Maaser obligation and permit the remaining 99 figs for consumption by a non-Kohen. Now, I want to point out the Ravad also says that 10 newly designated Maaser Rishon figs are not from the original batch of Maaser Rishon, and they can still be used as Trumas Maaser on their behalf, just as tevel from one basket can be used as Maaser for tevel in another basket. So here again, this group of 101 will be forbidden to a non-Kohen, since there's no way of knowing which are these 11 Trumas Maaser figs. So basically these 101 figs have to be sold to a Kohen for a price of Truma, which is going to be a loss. And in this case, you can charge for only 90 of them. That's going to be different than the last case. Over here, you can charge for only 90 of them. And since 11 are going to be Trumas Maaser, anyway, you can't charge for them because they already belong to the Kohen. So that's a big loss for this person. And I want to point out that it will also be necessary to give the Maaser Rishon to a Levi, since there was 100 Maaser figs, and then there's going to be another 10 that were designated as Maaser Rishon for the 100 Tevel figs. So we have a total of 110 figs for Maaser Rishon. But the Levi himself would still have had to give 11 of these to the Kohen as Trumas Maaser, and since the Truma Maaser has already been separated from them, one only need to give 99 figs to the Levi. And this can be done by either paying him the value of money or giving him the 99 figs. And if one gives him the figs, the only benefit he will have had from this produce is that he'll be able to sell the group of 101 figs to the Kohen for a price of 90 figs. In other words, you can't eat these figs yourself. All you can do is sell to a Kohen 90 Truma figs out of the 200. And basically, 11 you're going to leave for the Kohen because it's his by right anyway. And then the rest of the 99 figs have to go to the tribe of Levi. So, big loss, and, what can you do? So, very important to make sure you don't intermingle your produce, because, as you can see, you can really suffer a big loss here. And even if you can't follow the mathematics, what you should be getting is that, part of this is still going to be the property of the Kohen. Part of this is intermingled, and you can't fix it without getting another basket of Tevel. And one of the other things to keep in mind, one of the things that you should be registering here is that you end up taking a big loss. You end up where you're going to lose more than half the value of this. Now you have the third case. Third case goes like this. If 100 figs of rectified hulin mixed with 100 figs of Maaser Rishon, whose Trumas Maaser has not been removed, so that's going to be Tevel, because the Truma Maaser is going to make sure that the pile is not Tevel. And he wants to tithe the mixture and permit part of it for consumption by a non-Kohen. So since the hulin is going to be completely rectified, nothing needs to remove from that pile. The Maaser, however, needs to be taken out of the second pile. So he must remove 10 Maaser Rishon figs from the mixture and designate them as Trumas Maaser. So the Mishnah continues, and it says he must remove 110 figs from the mixture, and he needs to remove this amount, by the way, to be certain that he took out at least 10 figs of Maaser Rishon. And then he designates 10 figs of Maaser Rishon in this group of 110 as Trumas Maaser, and he thereby rectifies the entire mixture of the Truma Maaser obligation. So what are you left with now? You're left with 90 figs that are permitted to a non-Kohen. And since it's impossible to identify which of the 110 figs are going to be the Trumas Maaser one, those 110 figs are all forbidden to a non-Kohen. So the owner has to sell all 110 to a Kohen for the price of Truma. And by the way, he can only charge them the value of 100 of these figs. Why? Because 10 figs are Trumas Maaser by his right. That is the Torah requirement. So you're taking out the Maaser Rishon, and from the Maaser Rishon, you take out the Trumas Maaser. That's going to be 10% of that. And what is that? That's going to be 10 figs. So you can't sell those 10 figs to the tribe of the Kohen. You have to give it to them. But this intermingled mixture, what do you do with it? You sell it to the Kohen, but you can sell it to him only for the price of Truma, which is going to be a loss. and you only can sell a total of 100 of them. 10 of these figs you have to give away, and 90 you're allowed to keep and eat. Big loss. Now we get to the fourth case. Fourth case goes like this. If 100 figs of tevel mixed with 90 figs of Maaser Rishon, whose Trumas Maaser has not yet been removed, and similarly, if 90 figs of tevel mixed with 80 figs of Maaser Rishon, whose Trumas Maaser has not yet been removed, he does not lose anything. In both of these cases, it's unnecessary for him to separate any more than he would have had to had the two groups not become mixed. So what this is saying is, what is this loss? And the idea, says the Mara Fulda, is that he does not sell any part of this mixture to a Kohen at a reduced price of Truma. And in the previous cases, because he was forced to remove a large number of figs, by the way, that would either be 101 or 110, from the mixture and designate a certain number as unidentifiable figs, among them as Trumas Maaser. What would that be? That would either be 10 or 11 figs, depending on which case it was. And the entire group remains forbidden to a non-Kohen. So that makes it necessary to sell it to a Kohen. Now this results in a loss. But as much as Truma gets a lower price than Hulin, there's a much smaller market for Truma than Hulin, since Truma could only be by a Kohen. And so, you have to be careful also to guard this for Tuma. So that's why it's going to be, selling for less. So then we're going to get to the last teaching. And this is the rule. It says, the Mishnah says, as long as the tevel exceeds the Maaser Rishon by this ratio of a tenth, he does not lose anything. So the idea here is that whenever the tevel in the mixture exceeds the Maaser in the mixture by this proportion, a tenth, the amount of Maaser Sheni that must be given from the tevel will be equal to the amount of Trumas Maaser needed for the entire mixture. And what's the result of that? No matter what he removes, he will be able to use it as Trumas Maaser for the entire mixture. And therefore, he does not need to remove anything more than the exact amount for the entire Trumas Maaser obligation. And accordingly, nothing is left over that he must sell to a Kohen for a loss. So basically what this is saying is he's not left with any mixture of Trumas Maaser and Hulin that he has to sell to a Kohen for a loss. This is what the Mishnah means when he says he doesn't lose anything. So I want to just point out some of the math on this. So you have a total of Trumas Maaser obligation from a mixture, and that's going to be a tenth of the original Maaser, and 100th of that's going to be tevel. So what this is trying to say is that since the tevel is a tenth greater than the original Maaser, a total of a tenth of the tevel, that's going to be Maaser Rishon, is equal to a tenth of the original Maaser plus a tenth of a tenth. And that's going to be 100. And we can see that by dividing the tevel into equal parts. For example, 10 would be 10 times 10. And 9 of these are going to be equal to the original number, so 9 times 10 is 90. And basically a tenth of the tevel is going to be equal to a tenth of the first 9 parts plus a tenth of the 10th part. So if he's removing from the original Maaser Rishon, they're going to be designated as Trumas Maaser immediately. And so then if they are all from this tevel, then they can be designated first as Maaser Rishon on behalf of the tevel, and then the Truma Maaser on behalf of the mixture as a whole. And if there's any combination of the two, he can designate the tevel ones in this group as Maaser Rishon, and then all of them as Maaser Sheni. Now, you can't know which of these removed would be tevel and which are going to be Maaser, so he has to make a stipulation that, whichever, tevel figs are in the group he's removing should be designated Maaser Rishon on behalf of the rest of the tevel. By the way, you're supposed to say where the location of that is when you're making a designation. And after all these figs have been removed, he can designate as Trumas Maaser for the mixture as a whole. And if you do it this way, you don't get a loss. But again, this is talking about a different case than the other cases. This is talking about a case where the tevel exceeds the Maaser Rishon by a tenth. And if it doesn't, you're stuck in one of these other four cases that we were just talking about. Now, we've just learned in the Mishnah's second case that where you have 100 figs of tevel mixed with 100 figs of Maaser, we have to remove 101 figs from this mixture of 200 and declare 11 of them to be Trumas Maaser. However, even after you remove these 101 figs, one must first designate the Maaser Rishon for the tevel before you designate the Trumas Maaser for the entire mixture, and the Gemara cites a dispute as to how the tithing should be made. There's going to be a maloket between Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish says about this tithing of 101 figs out of the 200 that one must stipulate and say regarding each of them, if tevel has come up in my hand, then it is hereby designated as Maaser Rishon for the tevel figs, and this Maaser Rishon is now designated Trumas Maaser. And if the Maaser Rishon has come up in my hands, then it is hereby designated as Trumas Maaser. Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish is getting into a similar declaration that we saw in Masechet Peah, where an ear of Peah gets intermingled with a pile of grain that has already been rectified, and you can't figure out which one of the ears is going to be Peah. And so over there, you have in Masechet Peah, you have a 3-part declaration in order to fix this pile. And without that, you can't fix this pile. So over here, he's using a similar designation because, again, you don't know which one of these is going to be the Maaser Rishon, because you can come back and say, no, that wasn't the Maaser Rishon. This over here was the Maaser Rishon. And you could come along here and say, no, that wasn't the Trumas Maaser. The Trumas Maaser is in this part of the pile over here. So what he's trying to do is he's trying to use a similar formula that we saw for fixing Peah that gets intermingled with a group of ears of grain that's already been cleaned as a pile. And basically what this is trying to say is that, you have this doubt as to, where the location of this would be for each one of these ties. And you have this doubt that persists throughout this mixture, even if you're picking them out, because you could always say, well, it's not over there, it's over here. So that's the formulation by Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish. That's why he's doing it. And the Gemara is going to clarify Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish's ruling. Rabbi Yonah said, according to Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish, he must double his stipulation and say, and if not, then I have done nothing. In other words, after he's saying that if the tevel has come up in my hands, then it is hereby designated as Maaser, and he has to complete this part of the stipulation by stating the reverse as well, that, and basically saying that, and if it is not tevel, then I've not done anything, and it's not designated as Maaser. And the same applies to the other parts of the stipulation as well, when he goes to the other parts of the tithes. So after saying that, if Maaser has come up in my hands, then it is hereby designated as Trumas Maaser, he has to complete that part of the stipulation by saying that if it is not Maaser, I've not done anything, is not designated as Trumas Maaser. And by the way, again, this is a very similar declaration that we saw in Masechet Peah. And Rabbi Yonah's point is to push home the fact that the stipulations mentioned by Rish Lakish are an absolute requirement, and that's why you need even a doubled stipulation. And by the way, this is going to contrast to Rabbi Yochanan's view. And basically, the Chazan Ish is going to say like this. He's going to ask in his Demai 11.5 book, he's going to ask why the rule of the doubled stipulation should apply here. And that rule applies where the transaction that's granting the land of two tribes could be completed without a condition, and the purpose of the condition is to prevent its completion until the condition is fulfilled. And for this to happen, the condition must conform to the guidelines established by the Torah. And in our case, however, the designation of certain figs as Maaser is only possible if they are tevel, and if they're not, it can't be made into Maaser. And consequently, says the Chazan Ish, saying that if they are tevel, they should become Maaser. It's not adding a condition to prevent the Maaser designation from taking effect. It's merely stating that the conditions under which it is possible for the Maaser to take effect. So why should that condition be doubled? And Rabbi Kanievsky says about this that Rish Lakish also requires that the declaration itself be expressed with a higher degree of clarity, and this is necessitating where they're going to state both sides of the stipulation explicitly. So that is this very detailed explanation of why you have to make such a detailed stipulation, trying to clarify, which portion you're taking out for the ties and trying to clean up this pile. The dissenting opinion goes like this. Rabbi Yochanan says that he does not need to double the stipulation, and in Rabbi Yochanan's view, the stipulation proposed by Rish Lakish is not needed at all. So he's saying that not only does Rabbi Yonah's view about doubling the stipulation not apply, that Rish Lakish's single stipulation doesn't even apply. So according to Rabbi Yochanan, there's no need to make a Maaser Rishon designation in regard to each fig separately. Rather, it's enough to say that the one tevel fig that is surely in this group of 101 should be Maaser Rishon wherever it is, along with the 9 other figs in tevel, in whichever of the two groups may be. And Rabbi Yochanan would even agree, though, that one has to specify some area and actually point to a location where this designation will take effect. So he has to add some statement like in the northern part or the southern part, and thereby be specific within this whole mixture. So the Gemara explains the rationale behind it, and we're going to get into the concept of Demua. And basically, the Gemara says that this one, Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish, as explained by Rabbi Yonah, follows his own reasoning, and that one, Rabbi Yochanan, follows his own reasoning. And because they disagreed elsewhere to regard to the following case. The case is going to go like this. If one had 2 piles of tevel, and he said the truma of these 2 piles should be in one of them, and he did not specify which, Rabbi Yochanan says the trumos in both have become sanctified in a state of demua. In other words, demua is a mixture of truma and chulin, and where the truma can't be identified and it can't be separated from the chulin, then what happens is the entire mixture gets forbidden to a non-kohen. You lose your whole mixture. Why? Because inside of there is something that has kedusha and it belongs to the tribe of the kohen, and you can't fix it. There's no way for you to take it out. So the truma basically, says Rabbi Yochanan, for both of the piles takes effect in one of them. And since we don't know, which, both of the piles are now going to be treated as a mixture of truma and chulin. And so the Pnei Moshe says about this that both piles become forbidden to a non-kohen, and a non-kohen can eat from them since they're not tevel. It's just a mixture of truma and chulin. And the Pnei Moshe says only the part of the pile that was specified as its meduma, and the other part of the piles is going to be completely chulin, permitted to everyone. And according to the Rosh Cirilio, basically both piles are going to be medumas in their mixture. So the Pnei Moshe says that only part of the pile is a meduma. The Rosh Cirilio says the entirety of both piles are. But basically, Rabbi Yochanan is agreeing with the rule that truma can't take effect unless it's designated in a specific place. That's one of the things to keep in mind when you are making ties. You have to designate the specific place. And he even agrees over here, and he's considering the designation of the trumos in one of the 2 piles, and in particular of which part of that pile, to be very specific. And the fact that we can't know which of the 2 piles contains truma does not mean that it's not been designated in another place, and the location of the truma can be in fact known in heaven. According to Rabbi Yochanan, this is going to be enough to meet that requirement as designated by a specific place. So basically, the truma is in there somewhere, even though you can't identify it. Rabbi Yochanan is basically saying that heaven can, and that's enough to identify a location. So that's going to be the idea by Rabbi Yochanan, and basically, we don't know, which part is going to be truma and which part's going to be chulin, and it's going to be sanctified, but it's a state of demua, and a non-Kohen has a problem from eating from it. Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish in this Gemara says that the trumos have not been sanctified, and basically when he's saying that, if they're saying from these two piles, where there's tevel, and saying, the truma of the two piles should be in one of them, and he's not saying which of the two piles it should be. Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish said that both piles stay tevel because it's not a statement, and he didn't say anything. And Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish is holding that a truma designation can't take effect unless you say a location. And if you didn't say a location, that's not part of the statement. It's not a valid statement. And therefore, it stays. In other words, it never got Kedusha, according to Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish. Rabbi Yochanan, though, is holding that as long as a person specified a place for the truma, its actual location doesn't need to be known by him, it's known by heaven. And by the same token, he's basically holding that as long as a person specifies a place for the truma designation to take effect, his declaration doesn't need to specify clearly which particular fruit is going to be designated. Now, that is definitely not an ideal way to do it. When you have, your basket A and basket B, and there's 100 figs in each, and you're going to make a truma designation, you should say the trumas that's in basket A, that's in the north pile, that has the trumas over here will be for basket A and basket B. You've designated an area where those piles is going to be, and you physically take it out. That's the way you're supposed to do it. We're talking about a case where somebody was very casual or made a mistake, and they basically came to make this declaration, but they didn't specify the location. And really, what Rabbi Yochanan is basically saying is that it is going to be a valid declaration. And how does this tie back? Well, this is tying back to, basically saying that you can get into these, troublesome mixtures where you can end up and you can't get use out of them. And in this case, Rabbi Yochanan says that's what you did. You made a statement. It is a declaration. And now these two piles of figs have had the trumas taken out, but you don't know where it is. And if you're a non-Kohen, you just lost the use of your 200 figs. And what do? Right? You have to go sell the pile of figs to a Kohen at a total loss. It's a disaster. So you really want to be exact with your tithing, and you want to understand how it works. And that's why it's worth spending a little bit of time just to look at it, even though it's hard. So anyway, this is dedicated to the elevation of the soul of Rabbi Pinchas Hai ben Malka. And, I encourage you to come back and, open up the art scroll and just take a look at it, just to get some broad concepts of this. And we're going to do part 2 of the shiur tomorrow.